Real estate is one of the easiest assets for a lawyer to find and one of the easiest to take. And if your name's on the title, your equity is visible, and your properties are stacked in your personal name, you're not protected, you're a target. So in this video, I'm going to illustrate exactly how high net worth investors structure real estate so lawsuits lose power before they even start. I'm the business guy with the Lawyers Limited Law Firm and Asset Protection Planners. I've been investing in property for 39 years and in the asset protection field for 35 years, and we have well over 50,000 clients we've served over that time, and over 150,000 if you include my seminar clients. Let's get started. So real estate asset protection for high net worth investors to protect properties from lawsuits. Let's go ahead and see what we're talking about here. Your properties are a lawsuit target. If your name's on the title, you have visible properties, you have high equity to take, that's exactly what lawyers look for, and that's why your real estate is a target. They say a rich landlord, a rich property owner, and like they say, if they can find it, they can go after it. So when a client comes to us and needs asset protection for their real estate, we separate three critical things. First of all, we separate title, what the public sees. We separate control, who actually controls it, and we separate the equity. We remove that from the property. That's what a lawyer wants to take. And when these are separated, that's when lawsuits lose power. Okay, so how do we do that? First of all, your new ownership structure looks like this. You're in control. You have a limited liability company that you control the property through, and the property itself is titled to a land trust for privacy of ownership. The beneficiary of that land trust is the LLC, which is the shield, the liability shield between you and that property. So you have the privacy layer right here, and we have the liability protection layer here. And again, the land trust owns the property. Now, that's fine when you're sued personally, or there's a liability on the property itself. But what happens if they're threatening to take that property away? That's where equity stripping comes in. We record equity stripping mortgages, which we'll talk about in a little bit, to extract the equity from the property on paper. And then if needed, we get a third-party lender to buy that mortgage. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So each layer solves a different problem. We have the liability layer, we have the privacy layer, and we have the equity removal layer. Okay, so here's what we do. The first thing we do is we want for your name to disappear from the public record. So if a contingency fee lawyer gets a hold of your name, is considering suing you, when they look in the public records, we want them to see nothing. Therefore, the title is held in the trust name, your name is removed from the public records, and the trust agreement is private. So we put together a land trust, the title is placed in the name of that land trust, and then the trust itself is not recorded in the public records. So the beneficiary, the beneficial owner of that property is private. All they see is that it's owned by a trust. They see the trustee. So who's the trustee? What we do is we set up a Wyoming LLC for privacy. Set up a Wyoming LLC. That Wyoming LLC, as the trustee of the land trust, has two things associated with it. First of all, it has nominee managers, so you own it and control it because you're the only member. It has nominee managers, so your name doesn't appear in the public records. One of our personnel's name can appear in the public records for you. They have no ownership, no voting control, so they really can't pull a fast one on you, but that gives you the privacy. Then we have a virtual office. So first thing we do, nominee associated with that Wyoming LLC that serves as the trustee. And we have the virtual office in Wyoming. That way, when they search your name in the public records, they see nothing. When they look up, that particular property, all they see is a Wyoming LLC as the trustee. Your name is nowhere to be found. So no visibility equals less targeting from the lawyers. So that's the first step, is privacy. The next thing we want to do is we want to contain the lawsuit. So what we do, here's the land trust. The beneficiary of that land trust is the vulnerable party, okay? So what we do is we make an LLC the beneficiary of the land trust, so it absorbs the liability. So we have one land trust per property for privacy of ownership. We have one LLC per property as the beneficiary of each land trust. So the lawsuit stays isolated in that LLC, so a problem on one property doesn't topple all of your properties like a bunch of dominoes. So one problem doesn't spread to all of your properties at the same time just because there's a liability issue on one particular property. So that's step 2 is we contain the lawsuit, and we do that by using individual LLCs for each property. So we have your privacy layer, it's the land trust. We have your lawsuit containment layer, and that's your LLCs. Keep in mind, the LLCs have to be structured properly. It's not just having an LLC any more than just having a car without an engine and tires and steering wheel. It needs to be complete. The operating agreement needs to be drafted properly. The articles need to be drafted properly with the right clauses added. Membership agreements. You don't commingle funds, so you don't pay your personal light bill at your house with your LLC account that owns a property. You got to keep those things separate. So not only does the LLC have to be set up properly, we also need to make sure that you're not commingling your business funds and your personal funds. It's not a do-it-yourself project, because when the rubber meets the road and you have an opposing attorney who is going after your throat, you want to make sure that it was set up properly, legally, all your ducks in a row, and everything's done correctly. Next, step 3, we want to remove the incentive to sue. So how do we do that? Here's an example. We have a property value. It's a $1 million property. It has a $100,000 mortgage on it and $900,000 of equity. So what we do is we record an equity line of credit mortgage against the property. Let's say we record a $850,000 equity line of credit against the property, added to the existing $100,000 lien. Now you have $950,000 in debt against a $1 million property. Only have $50,000 equity. Well, how much does it cost to sell a property? We got the real estate commission, you got the closing cost. That usually eats up roughly 10% of the sales price. So 10% of $1 million is $100,000 cost to sell the property. Well, you only have $50,000 in equity. There's not even enough meat on the bone to sell the property. So lawyers don't chase property. They chase equity. So with the equity stripping strategy, there's 2 steps. First is we record a mortgage against the property. If there's no mortgage, it'll be a first mortgage. If there's already one mortgage, it will record a second mortgage. And it's an equity line of credit mortgage, and it's typically payable to an LLC that you own or control. Typically, the best way to do this is we have an LLC inside of a Cook Islands trust, and that records the lien. Then if needed, we have a third-party lender to purchase that mortgage. We put the proceeds, the resultant cash from that mortgage, inside of a Cook Islands trust, and that way it's protected from lawsuits. The cash is protected from lawsuits, and the equity has been stripped away from the property, so there's nothing attractive. There's nothing left of value to take. So like we said, if needed, and this is optional, we have the property, we sell the lien, the mortgage, to a third-party lender, and the proceeds go into your offshore trust. Now, it's not just hidden, it's unreachable because there's no equity left in the property to take. Okay, now let's talk about your personal residence, because it's a different tax bucket. There's the bucket for a rental property, and then there's a bucket for your personal residence. Tax-wise, they're treated differently because, as you know, you can write off the interest on your personal residence up to a certain amount of mortgage value. You can sell the property and not pay taxes on a certain amount of the proceeds, and that doubles if you're married. You have homestead protection in some states. So we approach it a little bit differently because of those benefits. So we want to preserve what matters. We want to keep the homestead exemption. We want to preserve the capital gains exclusion. That's when you sell it. You don't have to pay tax on a big chunk of the profits, and you want to maintain your other tax benefits. So the strategy we use, we own your personal residence in a land trust for privacy of ownership. We do not use the LLC for liability protection like we do with rental property, and we also record an equity stripping mortgage if you live in a state that doesn't protect enough of the equity in the property. So we do use an LLC, like in Wyoming, as the trustee, but we don't use it for the liability protection like we do with rental property. So the trustee of the land trust will be an LLC. And here's the thing. The trustee of the land trust, we set up an LLC in Wyoming. You need one LLC in Wyoming as the trustee of all of your land trusts. So there's the trustee. That's the one who manages the trust. You need one of those. You own the Wyoming LLC privately. And again, with the Wyoming LLC, you have the nominee manager, so your name doesn't appear in the public records, and you have that virtual office we talked about, so your address doesn't appear in the public records. So that way, because it's in the land trust for privacy, you get the protection without losing the tax benefits. If we had the LLC associated with the personal residence, you could lose some of those tax benefits. You could lose the homestead exemption. So that's why we don't typically include an LLC when it comes to rental property in most states. Okay, here's what the lawyer sees before and after we employ these real estate asset protection strategies. Before we put into the land trust or the equity stripping, your name's in the public records, multiple properties show up, high equity, and you look like you're shooting geese in a pond before we employ these strategies. Afterwards, the trustee's name appears. They look for your name. They see nothing. They're their LLC layers in case there's liability on the property itself, and they see little to no equity. So easy target versus not worth the effort. So that's what the asset protection strategies that we employ do. And I've been doing this for 35 years. And we have so many real estate investors who have called with tears in their eyes, thanking us for the protection because they could have lost, you know how hard it is to build a real estate portfolio, all the sweat and tears. And within a matter of months, that could all be gone in one lawsuit because you have an aggressive plaintiff's attorney who wants to come after and take what you've worked so hard to build. So why does this work? This works because of human behavior. Lawyers typically work on contingency. And if they see you have deep pockets, they're going to take the case. They want easy wins. They want to avoid complexity. If you got a bunch of properties with a whole bunch of equity, then that takes that complexity away from their life and it gives them an easy payday. So they go where they see visible equity. We don't make you lawsuit proof. We make you lawsuit unattractive, stripping the equity, giving you privacy, and giving you the liability shield that you need to be able to survive a vicious attack on what you work so hard for. So here's what happens after you're gone. We would typically include a living trust in the mix, which avoids probate, controlled distribution to your loved ones after you're gone. It's set up to protect the family from divorce. Imagine working so hard and then having your kids inherit your assets. And then there's a divorce and their ex-spouse gets half of everything you work so hard to build. So there can be provisions in place that keeps the assets in the family chain. You also maintain your privacy and you ensure your plan carries out your own wishes. So when you're gone, the plan doesn't end with you. So what is real estate asset protection really? At the end of the day, it isn't about hiding assets. It's about changing the way that they're seen, controlled and attacked. So when your name disappears from the public records, when lawsuits get contained inside one entity, when the equity is stripped out, you go from being a target to being a dead end. And here's the truth that really, most people, in my experience, learn too late. You don't build when you need it. You build before anybody comes looking. So you have two choices. Do nothing, stay exposed, and hope nothing happens, or structure it properly from the beginning and take control of the outcome. If you want help designing this the right way for your situation, you can visit us at assetprotectionplanners.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.